Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We're presented by CLNS Media. Today on the show, we've got good friend of the program and finally colleague of mine at The Athletic, Tony Jones, joining me now. Tony, how's it going over on your end in Salt Lake City?
Same team now, like we're on the same team.
We're on the same team.
So
that's clutch. That's what we're looking for. And just in general, I should just tell people, you're going to be on the podcast a lot more this year, like something resembling once a week, like maybe not, who knows, like if it'll be exactly once a week, if it'll be 3 times a month, who knows. But you're going to be on the podcast a lot more this year because it is enjoyable to talk to you and to get your perspective on things.
Well, thank you so much for having me as a regular or a semi-regular or whatever we want to call it. I was definitely looking for a podcast home, and I begged you, and I sent you flowers, and all of the reaching out and the love that I showed you was finally received. It took like a few hours for you to accept this, but
yeah, I have to think through all of the options here. And speaking of options. Rookies often have to go through a process where their team options are declined and accepted. And once you get to the end of that 4-year process, teams have to decide if they want to keep you. You're a restricted free agent at the end of 4 years. But prior to that, and really in the preseason prior to your 4th year, teams can make the decision on whether or not they want to extend you. The deadline this year for extensions is October 15th. Tony and I today are going to talk about extensions and potential rookie extensions, or in Devin Booker and Karl Towns' cases, the ones that have already been done. First, though, it's worth mentioning this podcast is sponsored by Simple Contacts, just a great product. You can use that promo code GameTheory20 to get $20 off of your first purchase. Again, though, before we even get into that, let's jump into Jimmy Butler real quick. We're not going to belabor Jimmy Butler. Tony and I talked about him for like an hour and 10 minutes probably on the last time Tony was on. Dieter and I talked about him on the last podcast for like an hour. I don't really think it's worth necessarily belaboring all of this. I think we can talk about him for 5 minutes and just get it out of the way. It is the most important story in the NBA right now, though. Do you have any different thoughts now that we're a week and a half out from Jimmy Butler requesting a trade?
Not particularly. I think it's rather funny that Jimmy's, frustrated by the process that he hasn't been traded yet. But, that's kind of what happens when you ask to be traded about a week before training camp. All of that stuff takes time. I don't think that his value is particularly high in light of, just how all of this stuff has gone down. I think that he can be stolen by somebody like Houston, who, maybe offers Eric Gordon and filler and a few picks. But, I think, with Jimmy, I think that you just have to, I think he's, they're just going to have to go through that process and see what happens. But, it's obvious that he's probably never suiting up for the Minnesota Timberwolves again.
Yeah, the names that I keep hearing coming up here, you hear Houston come up occasionally. You hear Miami has probably been the biggest player that you hear come up in these trade negotiations. And throughout all of this, the thing that you hear more than anything is that Minnesota is just asking for the world. They're asking for current players who can help, prospects and picks. And that's just something that teams nowadays are not going to give up for a player on a 1-year contract, especially one that likely will leave in the offseason. Now, you can make the case that Houston is in a particularly good place, given that Jimmy is from Texas originally. I believe he actually is from the Houston-ish area, if I remember correctly. Originally, and you can make the case that Miami obviously is a very attractive place to live, in that they would have good opportunities to offer him long-term money. But the team that trades for Jimmy Butler is going to have in mind already what the limit is that they're willing to go to. Like, for instance, when Houston traded for Chris Paul last year, they did so knowing what their limit was going to be on offering him a contract this offseason, and they end up at a place where Chris Paul does not get his 5-year max. He only gets a 4-year max. Jimmy Butler is going to be in a pretty similar situation next summer, I think, where teams like the team that is incumbent probably will be hesitant to offer him 5 years. He's 30 years old, or at least will be next summer. And it's a very difficult decision to make, to be willing to give that kind of long-term money to him whenever he has as many minutes and as many high-minute games, high-impact games as he has already on his body.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, and that's what we need to figure out. I mean, he's 29 years old, and we need to figure out if he's been tipsed. You know, I mean, you look at Joakim Noah. He was an All-NBA player 5 years ago, and you know, now he's essentially done. Same thing with Luol Deng. I mean, I think, you know, we're going to find out if he has any gas left in the tank this year, but you know, he had a sharp decline, and Noah and Luol Deng both had a sharp decline around 29, 30 years old, which is kind of which is early to have a sharp decline. So, you know, I thought Jimmy Butler played really well last year. At the same time, I thought that, you know, he was a little worn down at the end of the year, and I think that was accentuated by his knee injury at the end of the year. So, you know, how much of his prime does he have left? And, you know, the team that gets him, they're going to have to wonder, like, do you want to max him out for 5 years and pay him, you know, as much that you're going to have to pay him when he's 34 years old? So, you know, I think with Jimmy, I think there are a lot of risks. There are more risk in my eyes with Jimmy Butler than there is with, you know, any other player in his prime and is in the same situation in terms of, you know, being 29, being one of the top 10 to 15 players in the league, and being one of the top two-way players in the league. So is his game going to age gracefully, and is he going to be a good locker room guy? And those are really big questions that need to be answered for whatever team trades for him this year.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that given the fact that we have an absence of new information here, it's not worth necessarily diving super deep into all of this. Let's get into these rookie extensions here. Rookie extensions are a fascinating process within the NBA, in my opinion, because it's often a game of projection. If you remember when Mike Conley signed his 5-year, I believe it was $40 million, $45 million contract, many around the NBA absolutely murdered it. And then it turned out that was a drastic underpayment over the course of the contract's life. It's so much about projection with these that, you know, over the next 15 days, 18 days, however long it is until October 15th, we're recording this on September 28th. It is, I think, going to surprise people often if some of these extensions get done, just how much teams have to outlay in order to lock these players down. I mean, like Cody Zeller, you had to give him, I think it was 4 years, 56. You had to give Gorgie Jeng 4 years, 64 to get these deals done. And those players aren't necessarily always worth that money. And it's a question of whether or not they ever will be.
I've always been told you're worth whatever you get paid. But
no question, the market kind of plays up your value. Whatever your market is, your market value is, that's what you're worth on the open market. But these players aren't on the open market yet. It's the thing. That's what makes the entire process very, very tricky, I think.
Yeah, I think that makes the entire process tricky. And I think, you know, projecting is a big thing. I mean, for instance, you know, Rodney Hood asked for 4 years and $80 million because that's what Victor Oladipo was able to secure in his extension.
And that was with Utah.
That was
what the
Utah
summer
Jazz.
Before, right?
That was last summer, around this time. So, you know, the Jazz said, okay, if you want 4 years, $80 million, go out and prove it. We're going to give you every chance to go out and prove it. And then he was beaten out by Donovan Mitchell, and then he asked for a trade. Then he was traded to Cleveland, and then he didn't go back into a playoff game. And that 4 years and $80 million that he aspired to turned into a qualifying offer, which he was forced to accept a few weeks ago. So, it's
the crazy thing is with Rodney Hood too is they probably would have done a deal for what, like $456, right? Like that seems reasonable. Like
I don't think the Jazz were going to do any deal with Rodney. I think that they wanted him to dictate what his market would be because they knew in part what the market would look like this summer. So I'm not sure unless it was extremely team friendly, and I'm talking about Alec Burks, 4 years and $40 million, something like that. I don't think the Jazz would have accepted, would have done a deal.
That's really interesting. But even 4 years, $40 million, Rodney Hood's probably kicking himself that he's not getting $440 right now. Or maybe he's just betting on himself here with this qualifying offer, because I'm sure the Cavs didn't really offer much more than $5 or $6 million a year even on a longer term contract. So Rodney Hood's really kind of the fascinating test case of all of this and how much of a game of chicken it is almost.
Yeah, I think it definitely is the game. I think it's a game of cat and mouse, although you never know who the cat is and who the mouse is. Like Rodney Hood did not get an extension, but TJ Warren did get an extension. Who was the better player at the time of the extensions? I would probably venture to say Rodney Hood was the better player at the time that both players got their extensions. So, I think it's going to come down to circumstance. It's going to come down to, what a team thinks this player can be. I think a lot of it just is going to come down to a lot of different factors.
So it's worth noting as well that next summer is not going to be like this past summer was. There are going to be a lot more teams with money out there, and that's going to create a really fascinating marketplace for restricted free agents, especially whenever you put it into conjunction with the fact that a lot of the names that we're going to kind of list off and run through here, the 2015 draft has really, I don't want to say it's underperformed, but it hasn't proven itself, maybe due to injury, maybe due to, just general poor situations or underperformance. It really hasn't necessarily gotten a chance to prove itself in the way that we all expected this draft to be pretty solid whenever it went down.
Yeah, you look at the 2015 NBA draft, and I think that you're absolutely right when it comes to the fact that you say that, nobody's proven themselves. Karl-Anthony Towns, he's proven himself to be an all-star caliber guy. Devin Booker's proven to be an all-star caliber guy. Kristaps Porzingis is probably an all-star caliber guy. Terry Rozier is really good. I think that he can potentially be a max guy. There's 4 guys in the top 16, along with Myles Turner, so 5 guys in the top 16 who have really established themselves as really good guys. So here are the other guys in the top 16 that other than those 5 guys that we've established. And so those 5 guys that we've said, Cat, Kristaps, Devin Booker are absolutely positively all-star caliber guys, and Terry Rozier and Myles Turner have established themselves as high-level starters. So here are the other names: D'Angelo Russell, Jahlil Okafor, Mario Hezonja, Willie Cauley-Stein, Emmanuel Mudiay, Stanley Johnson, Frank Kaminsky, Justise Winslow, Trey Lyles, Cameron Payne, and Kelly Oubre. Some good players in those names, but those are all guys who are going to be up for extensions, and
some of them aren't even up for extensions because they had their option declined. Jahlil Okafor, Mario Hezonja, it's crazy.
But most of those guys are up for the extensions, and none of those guys to me are going to be locks to be extended. D'Angelo Russell is the closest one. But is it a slam dunk that Brooklyn extends him, or does Brooklyn say, hey, go out and let the market dictate itself? So I think it's it's surprising that that this class isn't as established as you probably want it to be. And plus after you get past those first 16 names, it still becomes even a little bit more murky after that.
No question. Let's talk real quick about Karl Towns and Devin Booker. Those are the two extensions that are already done. Both of them are max level extensions where if either of them make all NBA this year, win Defensive Player of the Year, win MVP, etc., they will get 5 years, $190 million. I believe Devin's is that case as well. I know for a fact that Karl Towns is. These are no-brainer extensions, like very obvious decisions on the part of the teams that made them. Phoenix has built its entire roster now around Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. Minnesota, Karl Towns is very clearly just the slam dunk building block that they have to build around. He's putting up numbers at an absolutely historic pace. I wrote about that at The Athletic myself recently. You should go read that. These are no-brainers. These are the easy ones, and they are the ones that the teams involved had to make.
Yes, exactly. And, I think with Karl-Anthony Towns, I get on him a little bit because he hasn't won yet at a really high level, but that's just because he has that kind of talent. I mean, he is an absolute franchise guy, franchise center. He's a guy that, frankly, I expect so much of as a reporter covering the NBA, just because he is so talented. Like, I think he should be a better defender, and I get on him because he hasn't been a better defender. But offensively, he's got a chance to be revolutionary in terms of how we view centers in terms of skill. And I'm talking about him, and I'm talking about Joel Embiid from the Philadelphia 76ers. He handles the ball like a guard. He can shoot threes. He's got amazing footwork. He's a great passer. He's a great rebounder. And he's just a guy that gets better on the offensive end every single season. So now it's time for him, because he has such talent, it's time for him to impact the game more, and carry Minnesota to where they need to be. I mean, he's a guy who I expect to be a 25-10, 25-11, 25-12 type of guy for the next 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I expect him at some point to finish in the top 3 in scoring multiple times. He's just that good. He's that skilled and that efficient. And then you look at like Devin Booker. Devin Booker is on an incredible scoring pace. He's someone that I talked about extensively this summer as someone that I've really come around on as a general building block. You look at what he's done so far. He's averaged 25, 4.5 and 4.7 a game already on plus efficiency. That's not normal for a 21-year-old. That just it's not, and it's hard for me. It's always been hard for me because I don't think he's really ever going to defend. I just don't have that kind of faith in him. And you hear some of the folks in Phoenix thinking that he could eventually be like a James Harden type lead ball handler. I don't really ever think he's going to be that either, but he's someone that I think you can trust just in terms of off-ball movement, running side pick and rolls, kind of getting him free for spot-up looks, getting him free all over the court. I would expect him at some point to lead the league in scoring. I'm at that stage where maybe when he's 26 years old, 5 years away now, he's got a real shot to be that good at some point.
Yeah, I agree offensively. He's another guy who has not come close to figuring it out defensively, but he's another guy offensively for everything that I said about Karl-Anthony Towns as a center, I can say about Devin Booker as a shooting guard. By the way, those two were on the same team in college, and they did not win a national title. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about John Calipari maybe not utilizing either of them particularly well. Did not let Karl Towns space the floor. Did not start Devin Booker. I love John Calipari.
Those Harrison twins, they're really good.
I love John Calipari. I think he is a very, very good coach who gets a bad rap a lot of the time. that was not his best moment necessarily.
As I said, I digress. But
no, I mean, it's a no-brainer on those two. Anyone with any level of eyesight and foresight, I think, could easily have made that decision. You don't need simple contacts to make decisions like Devin Booker and Karl Towns' extensions, but simple contacts nonetheless is the most convenient way to renew your contact lens prescription and reorder your brand of contacts from anywhere in minutes instead of heading to the doctor year after year just to renew your prescription for something you wear every single day. You can do it on your own time and terms in just a few minutes. This is truly vision care for the 21st century. How does it work? If you need to renew your prescription, you just take a 5-minute simple contacts vision test online. It'll be reviewed by a licensed doctor. You receive a renewed prescription and you reorder your contacts. All you need is your current contacts, an internet connection, and 10 feet of space. Even if you're totally out of contacts, they've got an option for you. And if you have an unexpired RX and need more contacts, you just upload a photo of that thing in your doctor's information, and you can order the lenses with ease. They do all the hard work for you, and they take care of verifying and confirming your prescription. This is convenient. It's fast. It's reliable. It's a 5-star experience. It offers choice. It has all of the brands of lenses that you're looking for, and it saves you money. The vision test is only $20. If you compare that with an appointment, without insurance, that's going to cost you up to $200. So the prices are absolutely unbeatable. The standard shipping is free, and best of all, we're offering a promotion to our listeners. Go to simplecontacts.com/gametheory20. You can get $20 off of your contact order. You can use that promo code gametheory20. Again, $20 off of your first order with that URL, simplecontacts.com/gametheory20, and then you use that promo code again at checkout, gametheory20. Again, like, I use Simple Contacts. I think it's a fantastic service. It makes my life so much easier. I don't have to run down to my eye doctor down on Sunset Boulevard. It just makes life so much better. Go to simplecontacts.com/gametheory20. This isn't a replacement for your periodic full eye health exam. I still got to go down to Sunset Boulevard and deal with all the craziness sometimes, but it really does make your life a lot easier. They only test that your current prescription still helps you see 20/20, and they help you renew that prescription. They don't write completely new RXs or examine eye health. Nonetheless, simplecontacts.com/gametheory20. Let's talk about some of the guys that have not yet signed extensions. I would say that the main guy here is
D'Angelo.
I'm sorry, say it again?
Oh, I thought it had to be D'Angelo, but it is Kristaps.
It's Kristaps, yeah. I mean, you have to talk about Kristaps. I think he's in the most fascinating position because of the knee injury. You could make a case both ways for this, I think, if you're New York. You can say, hey, this guy is 7'3". He's unlike anything that has ever happened before in terms of suffering an ACL injury. We need to figure out over the course of the next 4 months how he recovers from this injury before making a long-term decision like this. Or you can say, hey, we're just going to give you a max contract. We're going to say, hey, you're our franchise player. We want to continue to cultivate the relationship with you, and we're going to offer you a 5-year max here. Or do they offer 4 years? There are some interesting little subplots here, but nonetheless, it's one of the trickier decisions, I think, for the New York Knicks, because they have to kind of just run that line of making sure he's healthy while also making sure that he knows that their relationship with him is extraordinarily valuable.
Easiest decision ever. Sign the man.
I think that that's the way that I would go about it, but I would understand if they would let him get to like July 24th next year, or June 24th next year, and then just negotiated a max contract at that stage after they see that he's healthy. Nah,
sign him.
Just get it done?
Get it done. He's a 7'3" guy with incredible skill, and he's not all that reliant on athleticism. I mean, he's incredibly skilled on both ends of the floor. And he's the first. You got to have him in place. I don't think that if you're New York and you have max slots available for next summer, that you even want to have the hint of not having your franchise piece already locked down and in place. Sign him, get it out of the way. I think that he'll recover just fine from the ACL. Even if he doesn't in terms of an athleticism standpoint, he's still good enough to be a 20-10 guy every single night. Just sign him. To me, it's just it's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, I mean, look, at some point you're giving him max money. Like there's just no real concern about it. Like I would expect that he doesn't play this season. Like if you made me bet, like I think that I would probably default to that he misses this entire season, just because there's no real reason for the Knicks to rush him back. There's no real reason to make sure that he's on the floor. Having said that, when he's on the floor, he's 100% a max player. He's a 23-point-a-game guy who can knock down threes at 7'3", space the floor. He is one of the best rim protectors in the NBA statistically, if you look at it. I mean, not only does he average 2.5 blocks a game, but his percentage at the rim against was first in the NBA last season whenever he was on the floor. So, look, I understand why the Knicks would have concerns about this. I might try and build in some insurance in the same way that the 76ers did with Joel Embiid's extension. But I think that at the end of the day, I'm with you that I would just sign him and get it done. I would just want this off of my plate going into next summer. But having said that, the thing that you do have to remember here is that there is the idea of cap holds here, where because the Knicks are going to be relatively close to a max cap spot, they do have to consider the fact that Kristaps Porzingis's cap hold is only $17 million, whereas his max contract starts, I want to say, at like 27. So they would be foregoing 10 years. So actually, I don't think that they're going to agree to an extension with him, because I think the math just works out in their favor that they shouldn't. But at the end of the day, they're going to sign him to the max. It's just when.
Right. You know, and that's the thing. I mean, but you have to weigh that. Okay, so Gordon Hayward left the Jazz in large part because he felt disrespected in his restricted free agency in 2014. The Jazz would not sign him to an extension, and they made him go out and get a deal and dictate his market, and Hayward felt some type of way about that. Now, here's the thing. The Jazz made the absolute right decision there, because Gordon Hayward in 2014 wasn't even close to the player he was in 2017. And, you know, he developed. But here's the thing. I mean, Kristaps Porzingis is, to me, already a max player. Like, he's a max guy, and he's a guy that, you know, you don't want. I don't think anything is worth him having a bad feeling for. And I think that the Knicks, for the first time in years and years and years and years and years, have had a good summer. They drafted Kevin Knox, a pick that I criticized, but a pick that I think was validated by his performance in Summer League. They drafted Mitchell Robinson, who looks terrific, and who looks like he could be terrific upside. And they hired David Fizdale, who I think is a terrific coach. So I think that they've made a string of good moves that I think that they need to keep up that momentum, and I think they need to just get Kristaps out of the way and then just move on to free agency. And if they get a great free agent next summer, fine. If they don't, they still have a core in place, and they're doing the right things, or at least they're saying the right things, that they're building from the inside out. So I just think that with Kristaps, you're looking at 5 years down the road when you run out of team control and you want to re-sign this guy. And there's already some water under the bridge with Kristaps and the Knicks. He absolutely hated Phil Jackson.
Yeah,
and he hated that regime.
Phil did all sorts to fuck up that. Like, by saying that we're considering every option when, in reality, like you talk to NBA teams, whenever that whole thing went down, I want to say it was prior to the 2017 draft, they were not considering trading Kristaps Porzingis. Like, they were asking for like 5 first-round picks or 4 first-round picks for him at the time. Whenever you spoke to the NBA teams that, you know, kind of reached out to them after Phil Jackson said that. So it's absurd to even consider the fact that, you know, the Phil Jackson relationship is going to continue to play a role here, but it will. These players often get hurt by their past experiences. The big thing that the Knicks in Porzingis, the big factor here, I should say, is how hard does Porzingis push for this 5th year, and how hard are the Knicks willing to negotiate, and how much is Porzingis going to play the leverage angle by saying, hey, we will sign with you for 5 years. We will say no player option. We're just going to take the 5-year money, and, you know, given the fact that I'm injured right now, we want the security. And if you don't sign us, well, let me finish real quick. The way that he can hold that over them and say, hey, we need you to do this now, is say, if you don't do this, we are going to go onto the market next summer. We're going to sign a contract with someone else that's a 4-year contract with a 3rd-year opt-out, much like what happened with Gordon Hayward. And then the Knicks lose 2 years of team control of the player that I think most people around the NBA believe has Hall of Fame potential. So it's not necessarily as simple as saying, you know, there's a $10 million difference in the team's salary cap by signing Porzingis later versus signing him now. It depends on how much Porzingis is willing to leverage this situation and really kind of force the Knicks' hand.
Well, we've already seen that Porzingis is willing to use leverage. The guy literally went to Latvia one summer and, like, didn't return any phone calls, didn't come back to New York. I mean, so, look, if you're the Knicks and he says that, that's fine. I'm giving him the 5th year. I mean, and this is a lot. This says a lot of what I think about Kristaps Porzingis. I mean, that guy is really, really, really good. You know, you can play him at the 5. You can play him at the 4. He's mobile out on the floor. He's a terrific, terrific defender. He's a terrific shooter, and he's a competitor as well. Like, he's not soft. No. He goes at it hard. He doesn't care who you are. He's going at your neck. I love Kristaps Porzingis as a basketball player. I think he's the most complete basketball player in this draft. I think he's a more complete player than Karl-Anthony Towns. If all things being equal, both guys were healthy, I'm taking Porzingis first.
Oh, wow.
Well, right now, Porzingis defends.
He does. He creates some issues in terms of defending in space, but you can build around him defensively in a way that Towns has not yet shown you can build around him.
And that means a lot.
Yeah.
There hasn't been. When's the last time anybody's won an NBA title without defending? It has not happened.
It's definitely true. I understand the point. I'm still taking Towns because the crazy thing is that Karl Towns is considerably better than Porzingis in terms of offense. Like, it's crazy. I agree with that. But, like, I'm still taking, I think, Towns. But Porzingis has proven himself to be a very, very real all-NBA talent, potentially.
See, my thing with this, I mean, Towns, if you look at Towns, his lack of defense hurts his team more than James Harden's lack of defense. Why? Because you can hide James Harden by giving him 2 really good wing defenders in Trevor Ariza and PJ Tucker, giving him a really good defensive point guard in Chris Paul, and a really great rim protector in Clint Capella. It's hard as a center when you are as defensively deficient as Karl-Anthony Towns to hide, because he can't defend in space, or he hasn't shown the ability to defend in space, and he can't defend the rim.
Yeah, there's no question. No question.
It kills Minnesota's defense from the inside out.
Yeah. It's hard. It's very difficult to hide centers. It's very easy to hide guys that are at least like 6'5" and strong, because you can just kind of slide them up and down the lineup defensively.
Right. And Kristaps Porzingis is a near elite rim protector.
Yeah, no question there. He is elite in my opinion as a rim protector. So
that to me tilts the pendulum for me to Kristaps. I think you can build around him. Like, you can put a Kevin Knox around him, and you know, if Kyrie, you know, I don't think it's going to happen, but let's say Kyrie goes to the Knicks and Kyrie doesn't defend well, you still have an elite rim protector in the middle in Kristaps Porzingis. Okay, and you still have to it's one of the reasons why, you know, the Jazz are so good defensively with Rudy Gobert there. I mean, you can beat one of their guys on the perimeter, but you get to the rim and you have to get the ball over Gobert, and it's hard to do.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Definitely accurate. Let's move on. Let's talk about D'Angelo, because I find his at least interesting. I would bet
polarizing.
You. Go ahead.
He's polarizing.
Yeah, he's probably, I don't know if he's the most polarizing player in the league, but he is certainly up there and will be throughout the course of this season. I would probably say that the Nets should not do an extension with him. I would understand trying to get him under contract long-term at a good number, but I would understand it more if he didn't have his injury history and the potential knee condition that people around the NBA kind of whisper about. Just because his legs have not proven themselves to be healthy over the course of the last 2 years, or at least healthy enough to get through a full season. And that is more concerning to me than the level of play questions that he's shown so far. He's still only 22. Like, I would expect he's going to be fine. I think he's going to average 20 points a game at some point in his career. But the injury stuff does scare me a little bit.
Well, I won't even talk about the injury stuff. I'm not giving him an extension because he's got to show that he can be mature. I think that he was a little bit better at that last year. You know, to me, you know, where is his position? Is he a 1 long-term? Is he a 2 long-term? If I'm an NBA GM, I'd want D'Angelo Russell to be a 1, but he doesn't run the team. He doesn't run a team and manage a team. Like, I mean, so he's much more talented than Spencer Dinwiddie, correct? I mean, we don't have, there's no argument there, right? He's much more talented than Spencer Dinwiddie.
I think he is, yeah.
Spencer Dinwiddie knows how to run a team.
Yep.
And that makes him a better point guard than D'Angelo Russell.
Yep.
And to me, that's a problem. And as a shooting guard, I mean, I don't think that he's, you know, for him to be a shooting guard for his skill set in terms of really needing the ball, he'd have to be James Harden, and he's not James Harden. And, you know, so to me, he's a little stuck between positions. I think that you're right in terms of, I think that at some point in his career, he's going to average 20 points a game. But, you know, his game, to me, has major red flags. As well as, I mean, and this is before we even get to, you know, his off-the-court history. This is before we get to, you know, the fact that he sold out a teammate, which as a NBA GM, I don't know, I'm still not over that. And, or if I were an NBA GM, and his injury history. So, you know, there's a lot of baggage there with D'Angelo, and I think that he's exceptionally talented. Like, I think he's extremely talented. He's creative with the ball in his hands. He's a really, really good playmaker. He's a really good pick and roll player. You know, he's got a really nice heart with the game on the line. You know, he's going to make big shots for you. I think when it comes down to it, I mean, he doesn't defend every possession, but he can defend. You know, so there's a lot to like about him. And then, you know, I look at everything that you just said, and it's just, so if I were an NBA GM, if I was Sean Marks, I tell D'Angelo, I say, here's 4 years and $60 million. And then D'Angelo's going to turn that down. And then I'm just going to say, okay, play out the year and get at me in free agency. Man. And let him go and earn it.
4 years, 60, like, I don't, that's a Mike Conley deal. That is essentially, to me, the same deal is what Mike Conley accepted from Memphis. And obviously, numerically, it's not. But, like, in terms of what the result could be, it's a pretty big risk for a point guard from Ohio State that has certainly shown some questions on the floor. The thing with Mike is that he didn't have any of the off-court stuff that D'Angelo does, including injuries, including just general wanting to be in LA and partying. The problem here, though, is they almost have to make their decision on D'Angelo now in terms of a number, because his cap hold next summer is exorbitant. It is $21 million.
Oh, good Lord.
Like, that actually takes them from being able to have like room for 2 max cap spots down to like 1.4 max cap spots. And that's a very real concern for Brooklyn, who's trying to be a player for these types of free agents. Now, even at $15 million, it puts a pretty real dent in their maneuverability. Like you're talking about then, in that case, assuming that they keep Rondae Hollis-Jefferson's $7 million cap hit, which I absolutely would. We'll talk about that in a minute. But like, they're at a place there where they're like in the 60s in terms of guaranteed money then, under that scenario. And that's not enough to get you 2 max cap players in the situation right now. Like I feel like, or in the current climate of the NBA where max contracts are 30 million plus. So they're in a place where this, if they are able to sign free agents next summer, this is almost certainly D'Angelo Russell's last year in Brooklyn. It's going to be similar, I think, to Julius Randle, where Julius Randle played really well for the Lakers last year. He was very worthy of a long-term deal, in my opinion. He's a lot of what you're looking for from a modern NBA big, but because the Lakers had grander ambitions than Julius Randle, they had to move on. It's going to be a similar deal with D'Angelo Russell just because of the salary cap realities that his situation presents. I probably wouldn't offer an extension just because they need to keep their cap space open next summer, or at least the potential for their max cap space to be open next summer.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, you play the nod, wink game, right? Like when July 1st rolls around, like, you know, the Jazz quiet is kept. You know, the Utah Jazz quiet is kept. You know, did their homework, right? Do we have a chance? Do we have a chance of Paul George, or do we not? We thought July 1st. They knew what it was. They didn't have a chance of Paul George, right? So, you know, they went on with what their summer was going to be. And, you know, that's what you have to do when you're Brooklyn. You have to know what the lay of the land is going to be on July 1st. So,
do your homework now.
With D'Angelo, okay, are we going to renounce your hope, or, you know, are we going to move on? Are we going to move forward with you? So, I think that's what that has to kind of entail a little bit.
So yeah, just due to, even if there weren't questions about D'Angelo himself, I think that due to salary cap situations, they can't really extend him. Let's talk about Myles Turner next, because if I was Indiana, I probably would extend Myles Turner. The big question, though, is what does Myles Turner ask for? Does he ask for a 25% max? I probably would not be willing to give him a 25% max. I probably would be willing to give him like $495 or something like that, like $490. I think he's very good. I think he will continue to get better. He's someone who is a very, very intelligent human being, very mature human being. I trust him as long as he stays healthy to continue to improve his game. I just don't know if he's quite a max player. 2
years ago, I would have said Myles is a max player. I thought that he's What's the right word? Stagnated or regressed the right word for Myles last year?
I don't know. Like, he dealt with injuries last year, so it's hard to say whether or not from a skill perspective he got worse. I would just say that it wasn't a step forward. It was basically a step sideways. You look at his per 36 numbers over the course of the last 3 years, 16.3, 16.6, 16.2 points per game, or points per 36, I'm sorry. Rebounds, 8.7, 8.3, 8.2. Blocks, 2.3, 2.4, 2.3. Basically right in the ballpark every year in terms of what his overall play is. So he might be getting slightly more efficient over the course of the last 2 years, but you're still talking about a situation where, in general, Myles Turner has basically stayed the same.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, he's going to be in that situation where his representatives are absolutely going to ask for max money with no question. And, and he's a guy that I think, the Pacers are going to look and they're going to say, okay, he deserves good money, but does he deserve max money? But here's the thing. I think that Myles Turner has the leverage here. Like, he's young enough, he's produced enough, and he's in a small market enough where, I think that he could come out of this with a max contract.
It's very similar to what happened with Gordon Hayward in Utah.
Very similar. Very, very similar. Absolutely. Where, the Pacers are just becoming a playoff team, and this wasn't the Jazz, but the Pacers are just becoming a playoff team, and, they don't want their momentum off the floor to stop what they've created on the floor. And Myles Turner is, if he stays the exact same, puts up the exact same numbers this year, he is still a shooting big with athletic upside who plays both ends of the floor. Somebody on the restricted free agent market is going to offer him a front-loaded 4-year max. That's a poison pill offer. Somebody.
Well, you can't really front-load a max just because of the way that the rules work.
Right.
But you can just give him a max. You know what I mean?
Right.
So they'll do that, yeah. Some team will give him the max on the free agent market, I think.
I think so. I think Myles Turner, when he comes out of this, I think he's going to get a max.
It wouldn't surprise me if this goes the direction of like Steven Adams, where they both realize that it makes sense for there to be something of a compromise, where is it really worth haggling over an extra $5 or $6 million in a guaranteed contract whenever you're talking about setting yourself up for a $90 million or a $100 million contract? You know what I mean? Like, is it worth like just kind of haggling over that whenever you're talking about life-changing money in general, and you're still going to have at least one more opportunity, assuming you stay healthy, to get paid?
Yeah, absolutely. And Myles is, correct me if I'm wrong, is he 23?
I thought a little bit younger than that. Let me look. He's 22.
He's 22. I mean, so he'll start his second contract at 23. His third contract will start at 27, maybe 28. He's got a chance to start a fourth contract at 32 years old. So, I mean, he's young enough that he's going to get a lot of contracts.
Yeah. If I was him, I would probably be willing to set myself up with certainty long term at the expense of like haggling for a max, just because it's you could probably get one. He might be able to get one, but making sure that you set yourself up at $490 or $495 is probably more valuable, I think.
Yeah, I think so as well. And he's in a nice situation. They've got Victor Oladipo locked up for the next couple of years. They've got shooters. They've got Thaddeus Young. They've got Sabonis. This is a team that I think has a chance to be top 4 in the Eastern Conference. But I absolutely think Myles Turner is going to find himself in a nice spot in terms of what contract he's going to be able to get out of this.
What I will say, again, there is a cap hold situation here. Turner is at a $10 million cap hold next summer. The Pacers actually have set themselves up for quite a bit of cap space next summer if they really want to utilize it. They only have $33 million guaranteed next summer. You throw in like the $6 or $7 million that is their rookies like Alize Johnson and Ike Onigbogu and Domantas Sabonis and TJ Leaf. You're up to $40 million, but they randomly do have enough space for 2 max cap spots. Now it's Indiana. They're probably not going to use them, obviously. But if I was them, I would probably just sign Turner. It wouldn't surprise me, though, if they kind of have like a, agreement to where, we are going to pay you long term. There's no question about it. But it is mathematically better for us on our cap sheet to keep you at the $10 million number beforehand.
Yeah, and that's where you got to have some trust between the player on the organization. And I think, if you're this is where I think, what Indiana did with Paul George last summer, it helps them a little bit. Like, I think, when the minute Paul George wanted to be traded, Kevin Pritchard went out and traded him, and they traded him, and they said nothing but nice things on about Paul on the way out. So it was one of those things where I think the Pacers did right by a player, and I think that kind of resonates around the league a little bit.
Yep, that is definitely true. Let's talk about, for my money, who the next best guy is here. It's probably Terry Rozier. Rozier is in a fascinating spot because the Celtics do like getting guys on good contracts if they can do so because they think they're tradable. You saw it this summer with Marcus Smart, for instance. Like, they're totally willing to go into the tax assuming that they can just move these guys at some point. It's smart for them to be able to do it. Just keep the team control, keep the player control, and go from there. Rozier's in an interesting spot because Kyrie's a free agent next summer. They certainly want to keep Rozier around as insurance. His cap hold is not particularly high because he went 16th overall in the draft. Like, you're talking about a situation where Rozier is only on their sheet for $9 million next year, which in relative terms, especially given the fact that they're going to be over the cap anyway, is really, really good. It's really fine for them. I will be fascinated to see how the Rozier negotiations go. I would think he probably is willing to bet on the free agency market and to hit the restricted free agency market and try and go out and get a high offer somewhere. Because, I don't see Boston going to $17 million a year, but I could easily see someone giving him the Dennis Schroeder contract on the open market next summer, assuming that he can be a starting point guard because he's proven he can be a starting point guard.
I mean, if you're the Utah Jazz and, Ricky Rubio is, you have the opportunity to sign Ricky Rubio for, $16 million, or you have the opportunity to sign Terry Rozier for $18 million. Who are you picking?
I would definitely pick Rozier.
Yeah, I'd probably pick Rozier. And are the Boston Celtics, knowing that they have to pay Kyrie, knowing that they're going to have to pay Tatum, knowing that they're going to have to pay Jaylen Brown, are they matching that?
Well, I think that they'll keep his rights until they know what happens with Kyrie, right?
Yeah, right.
So you play the string out until you have clarity on Kyrie, and then if Kyrie's leaving, okay, we re-sign Terry, we're in great shape. If Kyrie signs a 4-year max, then you keep Terry Rozier around, or you say, hey, Terry, you did a great job. We love you. I think Danny Ainge loves him like he's a son. So it's going to be difficult for them to let go of him. But just due to their cap sheet, I would think they probably say, you know what, we got to let you go.
Yeah, absolutely. And you Terry Rozier, I mean, I think you're going to get in between $16 and $20 million on the market next year.
I agree.
there's no reason to sign this right now. He's
here, let's try this as a thought experiment. Let's say he does sign for $16 million a year next summer, and Boston does that in the assumption that it's a tradable deal and that they can go out and get prospects next summer. They can give Terry a degree of certainty over long-term money, 4 years, $64 million contract. That's genuinely life-changing money for a guy that's only made $8 million counting this year throughout his NBA career. Like, is that worthwhile for Terry, maybe?
I don't know. I don't know if it's worthwhile, because I think that he's going to be coveted. Like, I really do. I really think he's going to be coveted.
I agree. I absolutely agree. But you would be removing the risk of injury. You would be removing, you have this money in front of your face after Terry Rozier grew up in like a shitty part of Ohio. Went to Louisville, hasn't gotten crazy paid yet. I put it this way: I would understand Boston signing him to a deal at $16 million a year, just for insurance, in the assumption that then they can move him on this summer. Or I would understand him saying, "Hey, I'm going to play it out. I'm going to pick my destination long term. And, if you guys want to match, I'm happy to be here. But otherwise, I'm going to see what's out there." It's not an easy decision, I think, for him.
I think his performance last year in the playoffs probably dictates that he takes the latter approach. I think if you took the former, I think you're like, okay, I haven't really established myself yet, so I want to be able to be secure. But I think with the latter, with his performance last year in the playoffs, I think that he's established no matter what, and I think that he's a guy that teams are really going to want to bring in, and he's in a unique situation that teams aren't going to be scared off of his restricted free agency status, because I think the teams really know that if they offer a certain number, that it's going to cause Boston to really cause Boston pause in terms of matching it.
Yeah, especially you can front load that deal because you're not giving him, like, Terry's probably not making the max next year. Like, we can say that. They can really cause Boston problems with a contract, depending on how they structure it too. If Terry wants to bet on himself and wait it out, I get it. If he wants certainty, I get it. If I was Boston, I probably can't offer more than $16 million a year, just because if I'm Boston, I need to know that I can trade that contract. Like, I absolutely need to know that that's going to be a plus expected value contract for me. And if I'm Terry Rozier, I understand him accepting it for certainty, or I understand him declining it because his upside is higher than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's move on. Let's talk about some of the more questionable guys in this class. The next guy here I have is Willie Cauley-Stein. He's already talking about getting paid. Willie Cauley-Stein.
Willie Cauley-Stein, baby.
My guy. You got to understand that if you play well, you're going to get paid. Like, just being real. You got to understand that these things take care of themselves, and to worry about that instead of worrying about getting paid. I cannot envision the Kings offering him an extension, just even though he is definitely like a borderline NBA starter. They have so many big guys now because Vlade keeps collecting 7-footers like they're dolls, that you just have to kind of play it out. You have to, if you're Willie, you have to get to restricted free agency and see if you can find a better situation, see if the Kings continue to value you, and just play as well as you can this year and put yourself in a good spot.
What's Willie's NBA skill?
Being super athletic. And honestly, that's a skill. Like, being able to switch out onto the perimeter onto guards, and like being able to relatively protect the rim. He doesn't rotate super well inside, but has potential at least to protect the rim if he starts to really focus in. It is a skill, but I don't know how useful it is, especially when his mindset seems to be, I want to shoot jumpers. I want to, maybe not focus in on the things that make me a valuable player, float sometimes. I want to, they put him in really weird spots. Like they run a lot of dribble handoff with him. They run post-ups with him occasionally. It's all very weird the way that they use him.
Yeah, and he's a guy that I'm like, go prove it to me. And then come back and look, you're the Kings. You got to play the long game. I like the Aaron Fox a lot. I like Bogdanovich a lot. They're going to have to pay both of those guys.
And I like Buddy Hield, too. I'm going to say that. They have to pay Buddy before they have to pay De'Aaron. And I think Buddy's going to be worth like $15 million a year. Yeah,
they're going to have to pay Buddy because Buddy is a shooter that can dribble.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, Buddy Hield averaged 14 points a game while shooting 43% from three last year on 5 threes a game.
Yeah.
4 rebounds, 2 assists a game.
They have a nice backcourt. They do. They have a nice backcourt.
They have done well building out their backcourt. And he did that in like relatively limited minutes. Like he averaged 19 points per 36 last year. He is a genuine NBA player. The rest of it, we'll see. Like, can he defend? Can he actually distribute? I don't know about that, but he's an NBA player that's going to be worth at the very least $10 million a year.
I agree. Yeah. So, I mean, you got 3 guys who, if you're looking at, the hierarchy of your rotation, I mean, they should be, they're more valuable than Willie Cauley-Stein. They're better players than Willie Cauley-Stein.
And that's before we get into guys that they have high expectations for,
right.
Like Marvin Bagley,
right.
Like Harry Giles,
right.
Scalabissiere exists. We'll see what happens with him this year. They have youth at his position. They have youth in the backcourt that they're going to have to pay. Their cap sheet's clean. Like they could afford to give Willie money if they wanted to. But you know what? I would just kind of let this play out and see what happens and keep match rights on him.
I mean, this is what I would do with Willie. I'd say, I'm not extending you. You got to go out and you got to play. And even then, I mean, if he brings me back an offer, I'm thinking long and hard. Long and hard.
Depends on the offer, but yeah, I agree. Like, he's not someone that I think people are going to be, like, fawning over or falling over in terms of trying to get. Let's talk about Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. I love Rondae.
Oh, I'm keeping him.
Yeah, like $7 million cap hit for Brooklyn. I'm keeping that on my books no matter what. Guy that averaged 14 points and 7 rebounds, like really sneaky last year.
And guess what? He can switch and guard 4 spots.
Switches everything, guards everybody, can really sneaky pass too. Like, look, I get that he can't shoot, and I get that there are fit concerns because of that, but like there's like real, like what, PJ Tucker-ish like potential here. Like, he might not ever be that strong to where he can guard 5s, but like he's very, very good and very, very valuable for the modern NBA, I think.
Rondae Hollis-Jefferson is going to be playing basketball when he's 38 years old in the NBA.
I think that's probably true.
He's
barring injury, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, barring injury, of course. He's one of those guys that's going to be playing a long time because he's, like you said, he's insanely valuable in today's NBA.
That dude fights too. Like, whatever organization you put him in, whatever situation you put him in, he's going to be a great culture guy because he fights. And like everyone who's ever been on a team with him loves him. He's like a super fun dude. Makes everyone on the team laugh from his time at Arizona. I've heard great things about his time in Brooklyn. And then additionally, even like he's the kind of guy that coaches are going to love. Like, for the locker room's going to love him. Coaches are going to love him because he fights and claws and scratches for every inch on the court. Like, that's a dude that, put him on my team any day of the week. I would probably offer him $450 right now, pretty easy.
Yeah.
And be again, Brooklyn is in a strange spot where they need to be conscious that he has a $7 million cap hold versus a contract that will certainly exceed that. But if I could get him under for 4 years, $50 million, if I could get him under for even like 4.55, that's something I'm probably doing. I think he is, like, I love Rondae Hollis-Jefferson's game. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that he's a guy that I'd make an offer to, and if that doesn't work, I'm probably just going to go ahead and match whatever he gets.
And you know what? If I'm other teams, I'm trying to steal him right now, thinking that the Nets know that they have to, kind of give him money and pay him next summer and see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to deal him. Don't get me wrong. But, like, any way I get my hands on that guy, I want that guy on my team. That
is correct. That is the truth. So
let's move on. Let's talk about, I guess the next guy here is Kelly Oubre. It's probably next for me.
I'm keeping him. Keep Kelly.
I agree. I would keep Kelly. I am a fan of Kelly Oubre. Again, a guy who can play 2 through 4 pretty easy. Probably not a good enough ball handler to where you can feel comfortable with him being the number 2 ball handler on the floor. But like if you have a Giannis, if you have a Ben Simmons, you can play him as your quote unquote 2. There's some longer, more athletic Jeremy Lamb here in the way that he can kind of float from time to time. But the longer, more athletic ability that he has gives him a lot more positional versatility, and it gives you the ability to use him as a help side defender. Like, he's not nearly as allergic to help side defense as Jeremy Lamb is, I would say.
He's a guy. I think Kelly's a guy that obviously he's had some maturity issues in the past, but he can switch 2 through 4. He's pretty fearless.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good shooter.
Works with Drew Hanlon as well. Like, I will bet on Drew Hanlon guys getting better.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. And he's a guy who's very ambitious, and I like ambition. And he's a fit for Bradley Beal and John Wall.
Yep.
My question is, how much does he get? My other question is, how redundant is Troy Brown going to be to him? Does Troy establish himself as a guy who's unique to Kelly Oubre in terms of, is Troy a 1 or a 2? Or is he going to be a guy who's redundant with Kelly?
Well, here's the case I would make for all of this. I would say, A, I want as many wing-sized guys as I can get.
That's true.
B, their skills are very different. Like, Kelly is a off-ball cutter, slasher, shooter. Troy is a
hand. He's very ball in hand.
Yeah, and like Troy is more of a ball in hand guy, distributor, guy who you can kind of switch 1 through 4 defensively. As many of those guys as I can get, I want. I think their skill sets are potentially complementary if Troy's game translates athletically to the NBA, which I think it will for the most part. He's not like Andre Iguodala because he's not nearly as athletic as Andre is, but he has that kind of skill set in terms of his game. Distributor, can lead the break, can really pick out guys. Very good slasher, very good creative ball handler for his size at 6'7". Kelly's different than that, and I think that you can make it work with all of these guys, plus Otto Porter, plus Bradley Beal. Like, I just want as many of those guys as I can get, especially whenever you hear Scotty Brooks, this training camp, talk about the fact that he wants to go smaller. He wants to really, really play small and up-tempo and skilled basketball this year. Kelly, I'd probably be willing to offer him like 440, something like that, maybe slightly more than the mid-level, and see what happens. More than that gets a little bit tricky for me. But I would at least be willing to listen on more than that if you think he's worth more than that.
Yeah, 450, 440. At the most, maybe you stretch it out to 455.
Who would you rather have, him or Rondae?
It's a good question. Probably Kelly by a hair, just because Kelly's such a good shooter.
Kelly certainly has the upside advantage because of the shooting ability and just like generally the body control and athleticism. I I would probably take Rondae because I think Rondae is just more established. He's a much, much better defender already. I would be willing to just bet on that guy being my consistent rock as opposed to Kelly, who can go up and down pretty heavily. But, I think it's a reasonable opinion to say that you would take Kelly.
Yeah, the thing, I don't disagree with what you said at all. I just think, Kelly's such a good shooter. And plus, you got to look at roster fit as well.
Yeah.
I really definitely like Kelly on Washington's roster. I love his catch and shoot ability, and I love, frankly, I love his defense, and I love his fit with Otto Porter as well. I like
the defensive potential. I wouldn't say he's there yet defensively. Like he gets lost a lot. His on-ball defense is good, but he gets lost a lot.
Yeah.
I do think that this is a potential situation for an extension, though, because they're over the cap regardless of what happens here. Like, there's no reason for them to not make a deal happen if they want to keep him long term.
Right.
Like, he's at a $9 million cap hold. It's basically going to be right in the ballpark of what his money is. Let's say he gets 12, something like that. If they want to make a deal happen, they can make a deal happen here pretty easily, I think.
Yeah, and I think if I'm Washington, I'd just go ahead and do it.
I think I agree with you. I probably would as well. Let's move on. Let's talk about Stanley Johnson. Stanley is tough. I think that he's not nearly as athletic as what I thought he was, what many people thought he was entering the NBA. He's pretty position locked to the 4 in today's NBA, I think.
You're not even giving him a 3?
He's pretty slow-footed, man. Like, he can get beaten pretty good by quicker guys, but I think he's a good defender against bigger guys. Like, there are 3s he can match up with, and there are lineups that you can play him with the 3, and I think he's going to have to play the 3 for this team because they have Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond right now. But I would feel more comfortable with him at the 4 for sure.
Stanley, to me, man, I missed on him, bro.
So did I. I thought he was I had him right around where they took him. I think I had him at like 7 or so on my board.
Yeah, I really missed on him. I thought he was going to be really good. I thought he was really good at Arizona. I thought his shooting would improve, and it just hasn't been there.
He matured athletically quicker than maybe anyone I've ever scouted. Like, he was 6'7", 240 his freshman year of high school, and is like 6'7", 245 now.
He's a guy that I think is a real example of it really matters where you're drafted, and it really matters what organization you're drafted into. Yep. He's a guy that I think if he had gone to the Jazz, or if he had gone to the Spurs, or if he had gone to the Celtics, would be a much, 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 much better player than he is. Than if he had gone to Stan Van Gundy or Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Those guys just don't have any use for rookies.
Yeah.
They don't have any use for developing them. They don't have any use for giving them the developmental minutes. And it's really sink or swim. So the rookies that are going to be good under them are going to be the rookies that are just really good, period, and are good enough that it doesn't matter where you're drafted. And it wasn't like that for Stanley. He needed to be in a place that was that was dedicated to his development as a player, and he did not get there. And this is what you have.
Yeah, I probably do not extend him. Just like I can't really see the two sides coming to an agreement, I guess. Like I just feel like they're stuck.
Yeah.
So tough spot. And then like Justise Winslow as well. Like Justise Winslow's probably proven a little bit more, but obviously he's been hurt a bit more than what Stanley has so far throughout his career. Better passer, much better defender. Still, though, the jump shot is seriously concerning. In the same way it is with Stanley. Like they're both very concerning jump shooters at this stage?
The shot is concerning. The inability to create space off the dribble is concerning. The overall feel is concerning. Even the defense is concerning.
I think he's a good defender. I will say that. Like, I do think he does well on that end.
Yeah. I mean, if you're Detroit, I mean, do you just renounce him after this year?
Stanley, yeah. I don't know if I'd probably keep his rights just because there's no reason. I don't think there's any reason not to. Like, you're basically over the cap already, so just keep them and see what he gets offered. And if you can get them for $7 million a year, something like that, $5 million a year, do it. I mean, like, Miami, Justise is better than he is, I think. Like, I would rather have Justise Winslow for sure. If I'm Miami, I try and use Justise to get Jimmy Butler first and foremost. But if I can't do that, I see how this year goes. I keep letting him loose defensively and keep on just kind of rolling through it all. Like, Justise Winslow can be a good rotation player for sure.
Well, Justin's different than Stanley. Justin's a playmaker.
Yeah.
He's a playmaker off the dribble. Good defender. He can't shoot, but, I mean, as I said, he makes plays. He's very good ball in hand, especially when you play him as a small ball four. He's very good at getting a rebound and creating transition opportunities off the initial push. And that has value. So he does that. So, he doesn't get the assist, but he gets a lot of hockey assists.
Yep.
And he's a guy that fosters ball movement. So, I like Justise Winslow. I'm trying to keep him. I'm offering 4-40, maybe 4-50. I think he's a good locker room guy. I think that he's extremely switchable 1 through 4. To me, he's Rondae, Hollis-Jefferson, but a little better of a ball handler.
Yeah, I think he's a little bit. I don't want to say he's worse than Rondae. Like, I think I would rather have Rondae.
He's smaller than Rondae. That matters.
Like, a little bit less versatile defensively, I think, than Rondae.
Yeah.
But, weirdly, I think Rondae is a better cutter off the ball. Like, I trust Rondae to be able to deal with the fact that he doesn't shoot well a little bit better than Justise deals with the fact that he doesn't shoot well. I think Justice's shot's a little bit more projectable long term, though. Like, you can see a world where he shoots 35% from three. Yeah, I think if Miami offered him 440, sure, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Again, like Miami, that is a team that doesn't really have a reason to not explore this, just because I'm assuming that both Hassan Whiteside and Tyler Johnson are taking their options next year, and that basically eats into their entire cap sheet. And like, if Goran Dragic takes it, it's definitely a situation where they have zero cap space. So I'm probably exploring an extension with Justise Winslow, seeing if I can get one done.
Yeah, for sure. I'm with you there.
Next guy here on my list is Bobby Portis. I'm a big Bobby Portis fan. I think that his skill set is very, very, very underrated for today's NBA, and that there are a lot of really good situations where he would thrive as like a starting level center.
Problem is,
bottom half starter, by the way. Like, I'm not saying he's like a good starting NBA center. Like, I'm saying like he would be like a bottom half of the league starter.
The problem is somebody's going to pay him a lot of money, or might want to pay him a lot of money. And, you have Lauri Markkanen and Wendell Carter. So
I think that he should be traded before the end of the year. If I'm Milwaukee, I'm considering it. If the Brook Lopez and Ersan Ilyasova deal goes poorly, if I am any team that needs a floor spacing center, I am very strongly considering trading for his rights. Like, if I'm Portland, like, I think Portland is a fascinating spot for him. Is a compliment to Jusuf Nurkic. Like, that is at least very, very interesting to me. If I am,
but I mean, they have Zach Collins. Doesn't that get in the way of his development a little bit?
Probably does. It's probably true. I'm a big Bobby Portis fan, though. Like, I would probably rather have, I don't know. Like, I'm very skeptical on Zach Collins. in his like physical development more than anything. Like I think that they're similar players to be like. I just think that he and Zach Collins are similar. I would probably take Zach because of the youth, but in the team control, but like they're similar to me.
I really like Zach. I think Zach has a chance to be pretty good.
Yeah. If I'm Washington, like if the Dwight Howard thing goes as poorly as what most people think,
if or when,
like Washington, I think is interesting. I think Philadelphia would be really interesting for him as like a midseason acquisition. That's the route I'm going, and then we'll see what happens with him. But Chicago's obviously not going to extend him. It's just, will he be elsewhere before the end of the year?
Yeah, I think there's a good chance that he will be elsewhere before the end of the year. Obviously, Chicago kept him, but how much, water under the bridge is there between Bobby and the front office in the wake of what happened last year with Nikola Mirotic?
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, the skill set is there. I mean, he can shoot it. He's another guy that's really fearless. He's another guy that plays really hard. But, just for me, I mean, you have Lauri Markkanen and you have Wendell Carter. You can't have guys behind those two that are trying to take their spots.
Yeah.
You have to have a guy behind those two guys that want to get those two guys better.
The next guy on my list is Delon Wright.
Love him.
You're a Utah guy, so
I love him.
This is a really, really interesting one because Delon Wright turns 27 before the end of the playoffs. And this is like reasonably maybe his only chance to get paid.
Yeah.
If Toronto offers him like $436, $440, like does he just take that?
Oh yes, just take it.
And just
he's in a good spot.
Like that's a tradable contract for Toronto if they decide they want to rebuild long term after this year. That is a deal that gets Delon paid long term and make sure that he's set for life. It's just like I think that this is a situation that kind of makes sense. Just kind of do the extension.
That guy is a hell of a defender.
Very, very versatile defensively.
Can defend 1 through 3. And he's a great defensive playmaker.
Yep.
And he wreaks so much havoc in passing lanes. His anticipation is almost elite in passing lanes. He's good in pick and roll, and his shooting has become at least respectable. I think he and Fred. But my thing is this: I don't think that he's a starting point guard in this league. I think he's an elite third guard. I think he's an elite third guard. He's Brian Shaw. That's what he is.
And to me, that guy's worth like slightly more than the mid-level.
Yeah, 436, 440, maybe 445. And he's an elite third guard who, if your point guard goes down, he can start for you for 50 games.
Yep.
And not make you worse.
Yep. Yeah. If I'm Toronto, I'm probably trying to get that done.
I'm definitely trying to get that done. Him and Fred. Well, Fred already got done, but I'm definitely trying to get that done. No.
Tyus Jones is next for me. If I'm Tyus Jones, I am telling Minnesota to leave me alone and never come back.
Sick rocks.
Yeah, get the fuck out of my face if I am Tyus Jones. Like, Tyus Jones is actually a really good basketball player. Like, he is, to me, every time he's on the floor, they are a very good basketball team. He runs the team really well offensively. He's turned into a very good defender. They are 4 points better defensively when he's on the floor. They're better offensively when he's on the floor. This is the fact that he is not in a position to where he can get real minutes on this Minnesota team is baffling to me. And
kind of laughable.
It's laughable, and I hope he gets traded because I want to see him do well. I think he can. I think he has the talent to do well, and if I am waiting out this year and seeing what happens, I'm gonna going to go to the free agency market and go from there?
I will say this. I don't think that it's all that outlandish to envision a scenario where in 2 weeks he's a Phoenix Sun.
Yeah. Would not be surprised.
He's a guy, but he's a guy who, I mean, you talk about, he's got that Spencer Dinwiddie quality where he just knows how to run a basketball team. He knows where to get guys in the right spots, at the right places, at the right times to get them the right shots. And you'll look up and you'll be like, oh, Tyus Jones wasn't that good today. He only had 4 assists. But they've gotten quality shots on every single possession.
Yep.
Because Tyus gets them in the right spots to do so.
Yep. No question there. Yeah, I would be shocked if he got an extension, just in general. Even if he's traded before the extension deadline, I'd be surprised if he got an extension. Larry Nance is apparently like negotiating an extension with the Cavaliers. Sure. Sure.
I'll take that. I like Larry.
He's fine. He's a very solid third big. Like, I'm comfortable with him. I'm not comfortable with him as a starter. I am comfortable with him as my first big off the bench. To me, that's like a mid-level exception kind of guy. If they sign him to $432, I think that's reasonable.
You like Tristan better than him?
I think Tristan Thompson is better than he is, yeah.
Well, he's certainly better defensively. Tristan's really good defensively.
Yeah. Like, Tristan's deal is not better than... Like, once
Right.
Larry signs his deal, assuming that Larry's contract is not more than like $10 million a year, Larry on his deal will be better than Tristan on his deal. But I think Tristan's a better basketball player, for sure.
I like Larry. I think I like guys who just get after it. And he's a guy that just gets after it. Ultra athletic. He's another guy that's going to be playing basketball in 10 years. But I mean, he's not. He's got to be in a good situation. He's got to be in a situation where, his hustle plays can affect winning and losing. And right, and in Cleveland's roster right now, that's not the situation that he's in.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. Again, to me, there's just a lot of guys like him. He's the best version of guys like him that are tough hustle rebounders who can finish at the basket with efficiency and who can switch with relative, solid play on the other end. Like, he's not great as a switch defender. He's not a great rim protector, but you can at least trust him to be in the right spots. Again, find a really, really solid third big man. Be totally comfortable giving him 432, giving him, 435, maybe even. I would not go above $10 million a year for Larry Nance.
Yeah, I'm probably with you on that. I wouldn't go above $10 million a year, but 432, that's okay. 428 is probably better.
Given what they're talking about, given how much this seems to be rolling toward an extension, I bet you that we are surprised by how much he gets.
Or we just tickled and we just start laughing.
Yeah, I think that's very plausible. The last guy here on my list is Trey Lyles. Trey Lyles has proved himself a little bit last year. I think, again, a very different third big man than Larry Nance in that he's more of a skilled offensive big man as opposed to just like an energy hustle, right place at the right time defensive big man. But a lot of places for Trey Lyles, I think. A lot of situations that make sense for Trey Lyles. He was a guy that averaged 10 points a game, 19 points per 36 minutes on a 59 true shooting percentage last year. Really, really solid defensive rebounding rate of 24 for a guy who played a lot of 4. Doesn't turn the ball over. I can't imagine Denver wanting to give him a lot of money just because of their cap situation. But he's a guy that I think is probably going to get okay money next year on the free agency market.
So, what do you think he gets?
I think it depends. Him and Willie Cauley-Stein, to me, are the two guys that I look at that could really fluctuate their numbers this year. Like if you told me Trey, like if Paul Millsap gets hurt and Trey Lyles like steps into their starting lineup at times and averages like 14 points a game while shooting 38% from three again, averaging like 6 rebounds a game. He's only 23 years old by the time he signs that contract. You told me he got $455. I wouldn't be like totally shocked, but I would probably want to wait to see him do it again this year before even considering something like this.
Trey is extremely skilled. Another big man who handles the ball like a guard. Can pass the ball, can attack closeouts, can post you up a little bit, can hit a few threes. Still very young, good rebounder. I like him. I'm not sure I'd extend him. I'd go out and make him prove it, but
yeah.
I don't think he has to worry about whether he's going to be in the NBA next year. That's for sure.
No question. He's definitely an NBA rotation player. I would imagine that next summer, like minimum for him, he's probably talking $6 million a year, I would think.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about Frank Kaminsky as well. Again, another situation where I would be surprised if there's an extension, if only because of their cap sheet. They are pretty capped out, but they are also pretty set at the center position because of the presence of Cody Zeller on a 3-year deal and Bismack Biyombo on what is essentially a 2-year deal at $34 million. And they have Willie Gomez as well. They have a very, very cheap option on him. I'm just not sure I see the value in giving Frank Kaminsky like a big money extension. Again, though, I think he is definitely an NBA player, a good offensive third big man that you can utilize in the right situations, as he's proven over the last 2 years.
Yeah. Well, he's a good third big. He's, to me, his best. His best skill is his shooting.
But he attack closeouts too. Like
he can attack closeouts.
Yeah.
1 or 2 dribbles. But he doesn't he doesn't keep me up at night with his shooting. If I were an opposing coach,
no.
He's okay. He's blah. He's okay.
Is he? Does he have a chance to be this era's Channing Frye?
No. Channing keeps me up at night with his shooting.
That's true. Channing is a much better shooter. What I will say is, though, the first 4 years of Channing Frye's career, shot like 33% from 3, didn't really take a ton of them. And then that year in Phoenix, his 5th year, is when he really started to keep teams up at night shooting.
Okay, there's a monstrous difference between Channing Frye and Frank Kaminsky. Do you know what it is?
Frank's white.
Okay, beyond that.
What is it?
Okay. Frank Kaminsky takes like 8 seconds to get into a shooting motion.
That's true. That's a really, really good point.
And Channing Frye takes like 0.5 seconds to get into a shooting motion. Channing lets it go.
Yeah. That's a really, really good point.
Frank pump fakes you to death.
Yep.
And it's just like...
And even when he doesn't pump fake, it's still a slower shot than Channing, where it's a quick release and he's gone.
Yeah. I mean, and that makes just, like, when you defend pick and pop against Frank Kaminsky as opposed to Channing Frye, it's just different.
Yeah, you think that you have time to recover against Frank, whereas with Channing, you have to stay tied to his hip.
Exactly.
Yep, that's a really, really good point in terms of gravity. I think that's about everyone. Like, I can't imagine Charlotte really giving out a ton of money. The guys we didn't talk about, Jahlil Okafor is not eligible for this. Mario Hezonja not eligible. Both of them had their options declined. Emmanuel Mudiay is eligible. I can't imagine New York going down this road because he hasn't proven anything yet. I mean, like Cameron Payne, again, another guy. I can't imagine giving Cameron Payne a contract extension right now. Rashard Vaughn had an option declined. Sam Decker, not a guy that's proven anything yet. Probably can't extend him. I mean, like, could Orlando give Jaren Grant an extension? Like, probably not.
No. And Josh Richardson's already gotten paid. Has he gotten paid yet?
He has. Justin Anderson, he's probably not going to get one. I can't imagine. Jarrell Martin's not going to get one. RJ Hunter is option declined. Chris McCullough, did he have an option declined? Yeah, he did. He definitely had an option declined. Kevon Looney had an option decline last year. I believe that the rest of these guys are not eligible, like Rashawn Holmes. I don't think you can give second rounders extensions, but like Rashawn Holmes is the 4-year guy. I mean, I don't think he's going to get one. Norman Powell already got one. I think that's about everyone that we have to talk about.
Good Lord. So outside of this group that we talked about, TJ McConnell and Royce O'Neal might be the two best players after that group that we just talked about.
TJ McConnell's a good call. TJ legit could get some money.
Yeah, TJ's going to get some money.
Yeah.
Now, TJ better make sure that he goes to the exact correct fit for him. But he has a chance to get paid. And Royce O'Neal, he's one of the best value contracts in the league. He's making like $800,000 a year.
I will say this for Royce. Royce is definitely a guy that has to prove it again this year. The reason I say that is that if you even go back to his year before coming to the NBA, like he wasn't really even a standout that year in Europe. They just brought him over and he performed exceedingly well in training camp and performed extraordinarily well last year as well. Like, look, he's 100% one of the better value contracts in the NBA, like Tony said. I do think that he's going to have to prove it one more year, though, just because like he was fine the year before.
Yeah. He's gotten to the point. He got to the point where he was a two-way guy last year. I have not seen him yet because we don't get to watch training camp. But I mean, my sources tell me that he's significantly improved his ball handling, and that he's improved his shooting.
He could always sneaky handle the ball at Baylor. Yeah. Like they ran some actions through him. Yeah,
and they're going to run action through him this year. But if he can get that shooting to the point where he's 38, 39, 30, 40% from three, he's legit one of the better 3-and-D guys in the league.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Tony, what do you have coming up? Do you have anything exciting that you're working on right now?
Just dropped a story on The Athletic talking about the potential for playing time glut with the Utah Jazz and just how much roster depth they have and how that's a blessing and a curse. I'm blessed to have dropped 4 stories on The Athletic this week. I have a long-form piece on Donovan Mitchell. I tried out for the G League, and I wrote about
we're definitely talking about that before you get out of here. So explain the process here for how you try out for the G League first to people, and then explain you trying out for the G League to people. Because legit, you might be the best player of these writers that has tried out for the G League.
Yeah, me and James Edwards are pretty good. Me and James Edwards are both pretty good. So, but I received a call from Salt Lake City Stars president Jonathan Reinhardt because 2 years I wanted to do it to try out, but the Salt Lake Tribune told me no. And Jonathan said, "Well, now that you're moving to the Athletic, you can try out for us." And I said, "By golly, you're right."
Was the Tribune worried you'd make the team? Like,
it was just against policy, and I don't have any problems with that. The Tribune's been so good to me over the last 10 years, so I didn't have any issues with that at all. But I mean, it was just an opportunity that I wanted to take, and I wanted to try out. It was fun. It was a fun experience. Obviously, being in basketball shape and being in professional basketball shape are two drastically different things.
Yeah, like you play once or twice a week, right?
No, I play like 4 or 5 times a week.
Oh, geez. Yeah, you're all. I know you're all about that pickup life. I didn't realize it was like that.
Oh, I'm in Utah, man. Ain't no clubs in Utah, so I just go play basketball.
Man, you have like a teenage daughter. You are not going to the club.
I told her I'm going to the club because one day I want to run into her. And she was like, You are not going to the club with me, Dad.
Oh my God. Explain the process for trying out for the Salt Lake Stars. Like what does a workout look like when you're trying out?
There's an extensive warm-up period. Then you do a bunch of drills. I mean, we did one-on-ones. We did, finishing, different variety finishes with both hands, a lot of jump shooting. And then we scrimmaged, a lot of scrimmaging. And, as I said, man, I made the first cut, which meant, the second round of scrimmages, I was scrimmaging with all college guys, and ex-college guys. So, that was, it was fun. It was intense.
Who were some of the better guys that tried, like some of the more familiar guys that tried out?
Isaac Nielsen was there from Utah Valley State University.
Started at BYU.
Started at BYU. Trace Curtin from Utah State. He was on my team. Lawrence Blackledge from Marquette played with Wesley Matthews, and those guys played on those teams. He was there. Brandon Sly from Adams State was there. A couple of guys from San Diego State were there. So I mean, there were a lot of guys there that had a lot of experience playing. So yeah, it was fun.
And Dennis Lindsay told you that you were in the top 50 of the 70 people that tried out, so that's good.
So that means at least 20 people were worse than me.
Yeah, like I said, like this is probably better than most people would do in one of these G League tryouts. So I will give you that.
I didn't die. That's a good thing.
I'm impressed with that part of it.
I was impressed with that part too.
Oh man, Tony, tell the people. Well, you can find Tony's work at The Athletic, but do you have anything else going on in your life that you have you want to point people to?
You can find me on Twitter at tjones on the NBA. If you want to email me, you can email me at tjones@theathletic.com. And as I said, you can find me on The Athletic, and me and Sam are teammates now. And so I just dropped a story on the Utah Jazz and how much depth they have, and how Quinn Snyder's got tough decisions to make in his rotation.
Go follow Tony on Twitter. Go follow his work on The Athletic. Go follow my work on The Athletic. Subscribe to the podcast. Rate, review. 5-star reviews really help us move up in the ratings. Anything that you can do to support the podcast, go to simplecontacts.com/gametheory20. Get that $20 off of your Simple Contacts order. We will be back next week with more content. At some point, Jimmy Butler is getting traded. I promise. And we will talk about that when it happens. But until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.